Okay, folks, I hope you all have seen this little Jesus I Trust in You card. And the coin that I handed out has all been blessed. So it's not just a token to play around with, but it's something for you to look at. And there's a little prayer in the back that's very meaningful. Later on, I will explain a little bit more why I like that particular coin. I've given away a couple hundred of them now. But anyway, again, I'll say I appreciate all of you coming tonight. I'll probably get started here, and I'll probably have to ad-lib half what I've written down, but we'll give it a try. I've got all these 8 pages. I don't know that I can read them all. You would probably all fall asleep before long. But anyway, this is kind of my personal journey to Emmaus. My wife asked me this afternoon, do all these people know anything about Emmaus, what it is? Any of you in here never heard of that? About St. Luke writing about Emmaus, the trip to Emmaus? Very quickly, I'll just going to read part of Luke's Gospel. I thought I had the page marked here. I do. Luke's Gospel, it's 24, verse 13 to 34, but I just want to hit on a couple highlights on it. To start with, after Christ was crucified, some of the people that were involved in all this and his apostles found out these ladies went to the tomb and he was gone. And they came back and reported that. Anyway, these 2 gentlemen left where this had happened and started the journey toward Emmaus. Now, I don't know what's significant about Emmaus itself. Maybe Father can tell me sometime, but nothing there. They're about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they started walking, and they were talking with each other about all the things that had happened. And they just could not get over the fact that their hero, Jesus, was murdered, crucified. And they were discussing this and talking. And here it says, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Doesn't that happen to all of us in our daily journey? Jesus is with us, and we don't recognize him. And I think that's what's happened to me. He said to them, what is the conversation what you're holding with each other as you walk? And they stood still, looking and sad, and one of them named Cleophas answered, are you the only visitor in Jerusalem that did not know what has happened? How can this be? And then Jesus said, what are you talking about? What things? They said to him, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed, and word before God and all the people. These women that had gone to the tomb were amazed about the whole thing. They reported it, and it continues on here. As they drew near to the village, Jesus appeared like he was going to keep on going, but they convinced him to stay with them, to have a meal with them. So at meal, they were sitting at the table. I presume it was the table, and Jesus gave them some wine, and then he broke bread and gave it to them. That's the first they realized it was Jesus. And like what happened to me, he disappeared. He gave them the bread, they recognized him, and poof, he was gone. So that kind of concludes my little story about Emmaus, if you haven't heard it before. So I'm going to close the book on that one. Now I'll start on my presentation here for you folks. My journey to faith, realization, and commitment. A full realization of this journey was a miracle event that happened to me 2 years ago. Before I begin, I want to share with you a few details of my life. I think I got them another outline here. Real quickly, I was born in 1940 in Worthington, Minnesota. I was the oldest of 5 children, 1 sister and 4 brothers. Lived on a turkey farm west of Watertown, about 3 miles. Went to country school named Prairie Queen No. 2. That school is no longer there. Sits behind a deserted farm place, I think. Graduated from Watertown High in 1958, and I have one of my classmates here with us tonight, Karen. Thanks for coming. Married Phyllis in 1961. We have 5 children, 4 sons and 1 daughter. And I've been a member, and we've been members of the Catholic Church all our life. I was born in 1940 in Worthington, Minnesota. My parents are Vern and Lucille Jacobson. My faith journey actually began the day I was born. Into the family where Dad was not Catholic, but Mother was a devout Catholic. She was from a family of 6 brothers. I call them Bruiser brothers because that's kind of the way they were, and 4 sisters. They were all Catholic, and as far as I know, they had all married Catholic spouses, except my mother. Not holding that against her at all. My dad worked for Worthmore Creameries in Worthington, Minnesota, and they had a turkey farm, and that's how he was involved in raising turkeys. In 1944, the owner of North American Creameries built a turkey farm out by the lake in Pesca. You know where the golf courses are. It was that quarter section of land right adjacent to the country club, but what's it called now? Who knows? I don't know. But anyway, Cattail Crossing is just half a mile south. So anyway, Dad continued on with the turkey growing business. Mother seemed to be kind of a tough German girl, especially growing up with them Bruiser brothers of hers. Mom was a good housewife and mother, but it was most important to her to make sure that we attended Mass on Sundays and holy days. I really did not question why we went to Mass all the time. I just obeyed and went. Mom could not take us to Mass sometimes. Dad picked us up, or took us to Mass, and he was always there to pick us up and take us home when it was over. Bible study was never an issue in our family. There was a Bible there. I have Mother's Bible. It's a red Bible. I read some of it last night with her name on it. So I know that she had a Bible, but we never studied the Bible at home. And we're not alone with that. A lot of the older folks, and a lot of you folks in here never even thought about that. Maybe your parents or some of your relatives never even looked at a Bible. And we hadn't either. So anyway, if Mom could not get us to Mass, Dad took us and picked us up later. I think Mom got that from going to the prayer, well here. Bible study was never thought to be important in our life, but prayer life was important to Mom. And so before meals, we always prayed for meals, and before bedtime was always important. And she got us when we were little kids and brought us up that way until we didn't listen to her anymore. But anyway, that's the way it goes with some of us kids, I guess. I think Mom got it from her parents that because they never went to bed without a litany of prayers being said. I know my sister and I, when we were quite young, 12, 13 years old, we used to go down to Worthington and visit. We stayed with Grandpa and Grandma. And it was never a night went by that we were sleeping there that you could not hear them two say their prayers in the evening before they went to sleep. I thought that was always amazing. I can remember it vividly to this day. Immaculate Conception Parish has always been our parish. Look, I skipped the whole page here someplace. Anyway, growing up, I was the oldest of 6 kids. My sister LaVon, who's sitting in the back row. Thanks for coming, Bonnie. And 4 brothers. I went to country school, Prairie Queen No. 2. I was west of Watertown for 8 grades. But when it was time for my first communion, my mother saw to it that, I don't know if she knew a sister or who she knew at church, but she saw to it that I was able to attend the class, the first grade class in IC school. I went to school there for a few days with the class and was able to do my first communion with that class. When we were there, All the boys were dressed in white suits, white shirts, white ties, black shoes. And all the pretty little girls were dressed in fancy white dresses, white shoes, and white veils. Amazing scene. I say, wow, we were the best looking First Communion class there ever was, and probably since. I attended school in town from the 8th grade and graduated from Watertown High in '58. My parents were very instrumental in teaching me the values that I now have. My dad taught me some of the values in life that I still now cherish. Honesty, hardworking, love of self, and neighbors. Mother always made sure that we attended Mass. That was one of her fortes, every Sunday and holy days. She also taught us some values in life. She taught us how to take care of home and family. Always loved all the kids, all equally. And that was one of my mother's best suits. I did not question why we always went to Mass. I just attended. I think I said that before, but anyway, I'm back on the same page again. Anyhow, I mentioned that my dad was not Catholic. And in the early 60s, he came to my sister and I and asked if we would be his sponsors if he was baptized Catholic. And so we gathered together and at Holy Name Church. I don't remember the priest's name. Maybe my sister does, but I don't. Remember Levon? He was one of the founders of Holy Name at the time. But anyway, Dad joined the church that day. It was a great day for us, for Mom and the family when he joined us. So I was raised Catholic. I was a cradle Catholic and have been all my life. I believe it's been in favor of God and the Holy Spirit. I've been blessed with my faith. As I grew up, it was always important I attended Mass because I was taught that it was a serious sin if I missed because of my own fault. I put a little note here. The old Baltimore Catechism kind of taught us that. But now I totally disregard those statements from being, I went because I thought it was a sin. Like I mentioned earlier, we went to Mass. Sometimes we didn't know why, but we just went. That was the way a lot of us were raised. I now attend Mass because I love the opportunity to receive the Eucharist and worship my friend Jesus. Phyllis and I got married in 1961 after 4 years of courting or dating. She told me recently that one time I stopped at the house to pick her up to go to Mass, and she couldn't get over that. She said, I thought you were going to be a priest later because you were dressed all up in a suit and tie, which never happened. So anyway, I was sure this was all to impress her, and it did, obviously. We were blessed with 5 children: Todd, Scott, Teresa, Joe, and Charlie. Some of you know those guys, some of you don't. We now have 9 grandsons and 9 great granddaughters. The story has it that before September we're going to have another granddaughter and a great granddaughter. Kind of interesting in our family how it's growing. I always thought that Charlie would never get married. Got married, 6 years ago, and now he's got his 3rd kid on the way already. So that kind of blew that thought of mine. But anyway, they're great little kids. Well, you got a nickname for the one girl. Tell us, Phyllis.
The wild one.
The wild one. The one that's going to be 5 years old. She's a pistol. Anyway, we always took the kids to Mass on Sundays, holy days. Often thought at the time that it was more of a problem taking them to church with the disturbances that they made and so on. They were naughty kids in church. My big mistake. One Sunday, Charlie, the youngest, he was probably 4 at the time, maybe 3, 4. He was just raising Cain in church. And we sat in the old church on the left side about halfway toward the front. And I had it with him. So I picked him up out of the pew and headed for the back of the church. In our old church, we had those arches back there, and as I passed through the doorway, at the top of his voice and lungs, he said, "Daddy, what are you going to do to me now?" I hadn't decided yet. I thought about, well, I'm not going to say kill him, but at the same time, believe it or not, there was a fellow on the other side of the church taking their kid out, and that little kid started to scream bloody murder, so they thought my kid was the one that was getting killed. We sent all of our children to IC school through all the grades that were available at the time. We believe that it was our obligation to... I got to talk louder. We believe it was our obligation to send our kids to Catholic school. And so that's what we did. We figured that all good Catholic parents would be sure that the kids received a good Catholic education. All of our children did graduate from IC school, all the grades that were available at the time. As we witness our children and see how faith has influenced most of them, we can be happy that our faith and our constant prayers has kept them in the church. Like most families, I'm sure that we don't know for sure exactly how active they are in the church because we're not with them all the time. But I will assure you that when with them, we don't tell them, but they go to Mass with us. But I think that's a pretty good chance that they're pretty active. We have 3 grandsons, and 3 granddaughters that are enrolled in Catholic school, Catholic high school, St. Thomas More out in Rapid City. And they've all done very well there, and they love it. Our oldest granddaughter will be attending Mount Marty College next fall. She's going to be a basketball player with them. As we live out our Catholic faith, it definitely has been an impact and influence on our family and friends. We thank God for that. When I was 32 years old, I was given the opportunity to attend a Jesuit retreat at the Jesuit Retreat House at Lake de Montreville. My friend Pat Mahold introduced me to that. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate that. This was a silent retreat and was a very God-filled weekend. I learned the value of being well-disposed. And if you want to know what well-disposed is, you'll have to look up Father Stokel, who's no longer there. He's in a home somewhere. But he always said, in one of his first things, in order to be a prayerful man here, you have to be well-disposed. No TV, no radio, no magazines. Don't bring anything with you. Your Bible maybe, but they had all those things there. But you have to be well-disposed, a good frame of mind when you pray. This was a silent retreat, which was very God-filled. I learned the value of being well-disposed in prayer in whatever I did as life went on. I continued to attend those retreats for many, many years. And I did attend 21 different times since 1972, I think I said. Those weekends gave me the opportunity to really be at peace with myself and the world and with the Lord. And on a personal relationship with Jesus. And again, I'll say I thank Pat Mahold for introducing me to those wonderful prayer-filled weekends. I've also been blessed with the opportunity to share my retreat experiences with several friends who have attended more of the retreats than I have been able to. Many years ago, my brother-in-law asked me about the retreats, and after we talked about it for a while, he decided that they would start attending the retreats. And so he did for many, many years. As a matter of fact, his family, his 5 sons, from the oldest started going, the next one, and before long, all 5 of his sons went to the retreat with him. Now, his second son, Patrick, who by the way is studying to be a deacon, they have 7 children, just started a new job. A little sideline there. See this cross I'm wearing? He was looking for a position in Fargo after he'd left his other job. He left on his own accord. He wasn't fired. But he was so impressed with the cross, and then other men in that same parish wear the cross, and they call them now the Men of the Cross. But he interviewed at a job several different times. Phyllis talked to his wife one night, and she said, "Pat hasn't found a job yet. We keep praying that he'll find a job." The next night she called back and she said, "Believe it or not, Patrick got a job today. The man hired him because he was wearing the cross." I've been blessed with the presence of Jesus in my life and on the retreats and being able to share faith with family and friends. Over the years, I've been involved in a lot of different things with the church. I was on the IC school board way back when. Pat and I were on the same board, I think, at one time, and that's a while ago. I taught CCD for several years. I got baptized in fire with the 5th grade for 3 years. Boy, that was tough. We wound up that CCD career teaching seniors at our home. We did that for, I think, 3 years. Finally, I think we said, wow, they better find somebody else to do this because we're not doing a very good job. We only had maybe 5 or 6 students ever show up for CCD at the time. We didn't have a very good program in our parish to support those programs at the time, as far as I know. I've served on the IC Finance Committee for 6 years. This last year was my last hurrah. Several months ago, our school principal called me one day and she said, "Dave," this is before I was off this IC Finance, she said, "Are you the president of the Finance Council?" I said, "No." "Well," I said, I don't know that we have a president." She said, "Well, here's the deal. We want you to come to a meeting out in the attorney's office." And it had to do with the IC School Foundation, which is a wonderful program, and I'm not going to get into details, but anyway, there I am on that school board, that IC School Foundation. That's a few things that God put into my life. All the while I was not fully aware that Jesus was with me in all these ventures, as well as others. Sometimes we have blinders on our eyes. We don't realize it. That Jesus is with us all the time. He's right there. And if you need help with some kind or another, you need to ask. You know, I like the little story about Jesus is at the door all the time. And if you hear him knocking, you got to open it. He's not going to open it and walk through for you. He knocks on the door, you open it, and you're blessed. Jesus has been by my side during my presence at adoration, while I'm serving Mass, reading Scripture at Mass, and being an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion, and also being a sacristan at Masses. I got something written here in fine print and I can't read it myself. Phyllis and I also worked with couples in our parish for many, many years. We got started in that, I think, because we made marriage encounters. We worked in marriage encounters for quite a few years. And one of the outcroppings was this, that the priest asked us if we could work at the pre-marriage inventories in the Focus program. We shared many experiences and tried to guide these couples by praying that their marriages would be blessed as ours had been. God was good to us over those period of time when we probably counseled, or whatever you want to call it, from 150 to 200 couples. And after many, many years, we decided, I think that's enough. I think other people probably do a job too. So God again was with us all the time. As time went on and I reflect back, Jesus was always with me and guiding me. Got a great family, wonderful wife and family, good jobs, not all great paying jobs, but they're jobs. But I did learn a great trade as a cabinet maker. I spent many hours using my God-given talents and projects that I hope help beautify our church and our parish and make it a more wonderful place to worship our Savior. I do these things because I love the gifts that God has given me. As I've met new friends, I was introduced to those people who most probably influenced my faith development and journey. The most important of these of course, is my wife Phyllis. She's always made sure that I was attending Mass when I didn't think I needed to go, and was involved in parish activities. It went on for many, many years. As a matter of fact, we survived our 57th wedding anniversary on May 6th. So we hit a milestone. As I look back and wonder why God was by my side all the time, is because I never thought that I was worthy enough to be aware of His presence. In fact, most of the time I was just so busy doing things that I did not recognize the fact that Jesus is right there with me. All has not been wine and roses either in life. These times are when it's never easy to think of God as a loving God. There have been times when I wondered, why, Lord, what have I done to deserve this and these unfortunate events in our lives? Only faith can carry us through these hard times. This is going to be tough. Probably the most tragic event that I've witnessed in my life was my father was killed in an auto accident 27 years ago. A few nights before that happened, I spent a few hours with Dad and had a nice visit over a cocktail or two. And we talked about a lot of different things. I don't even remember what we all talked about. It was really a wonderful visit. As we said our goodbyes, he gave me the big hug. And Dad always said, "You are number one to me." I left town the next day in a guard detail. When working one evening, my son Scott called me and came to visit me and told me about the accident. Phyllis was called by the Highway Patrol, and she had to go identify the bodies at the accident, and so she let the family know. Another real tragic event was 1963. My brother Jim, who was 19 at the time, we had a nice visit that night on a Sunday night, and we planned to get together a few weeks later. We were both going to work on a job clear out by Agar. And that evening, Dad and I and my 4 brothers had all went to the Casino Speedway to watch the races. That's the only time I can remember that we had, all 6 of us had done something, 6 or 5. I think it was I one of 5 or 4 brothers, Levon? Right now I can't tell you. Jim, Jerry, Ed, Alan, and Dave. There was 5 of us. Okay. And we all went to the races that night, had a great time, and we came back to the farm place. And after I visited with Jim for a while, Phyllis came out. She said, "Dave, we got to go home." You know, it was getting late, 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. So we went home. And 30 minutes later, I got a telephone call from Mom, and she said Jim had drowned. 19 years old. And we asked why. We asked God why. Say, Jesus, why him? Wonderful young man. Good kid. Anyway, I believe that God chose him to be with him, on those days, but it's very difficult to say to God, "I love you" in those circumstances. Over the last several years, many friends and relatives have passed away, and hope in God is what sustains us. Lost 2 wonderful friends in the last 7 or 8, 9 years. John Devine, Rick Roby. They were special to me. Shed a lot of tears at those funerals. Questioned God, why them? Great men. But you have to consider that after they have passed away, hope in God is what sustains us in those predicaments. We must believe in him to overcome our grief at those times. I joined the South Dakota National Guard when I was 17 years old, a junior in high school, and I continued in that organization for 43 years. I had different positions in civilian job until the last 19, and that's when I worked full-time with the Army National Guard. An occasion I will never forget when I was in Iraq. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Mr. Mack was there with me. He wasn't with me when this happened, but he was there. Anyway, one of our soldiers came to me one afternoon and asked me if I would help him join the Catholic Church. I was flabbergasted. What did I ever do to ensure or ask, even for him to consider, to talk to me about it? And my only response was, thank you for asking, and I will certainly do what I can do. But I'll have to talk to the chaplain when he comes through here the next time, which happened within a couple of weeks. The very next day, another one of the soldiers came to me and asked me the same question. Now I was totally befuddled what had happened. Why me? Why me, Lord? And I keep asking that. Why me? What did I ever do? Why me? Both of those men joined the church, and they both, I believe, are still registered as members of our parish. I wonder why I was chosen by Jesus to intervene for them. He most certainly was there to help me. I didn't think enough to ask him to help me, but he was there. And again, I say the why statement again popped in my mind as it has happened since. Excuse me for a minute here. I don't know if I have to blame Father Paul or somebody else for starting the men's group here a few years ago in Watertown at our parish. But anyway, if you want to blame him, it's a wonderful thing. He knows it and I know it, and all the men that go to that know it. I wondered about it, what it was all about. I thought they were meeting over in a church hall around some tables and big old folding tables and chairs. And they were talking about Bible stories and different things, but I just couldn't quite comprehend what they were doing. But anyway, the subject probably was about the Bible. I was not too interested at the time about being involved in something else in the church, And I said to Phyllis when she kept bugging me about this, why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? I said, hey, wait a minute here. I go Bible study on Wednesday nights, sacrament at Mass, serving Mass, build items for the church, serve on committees, Eucharistic minister, reading scripture at Mass, and on and on. It seems like every time I turn, something else comes up that needs to be done in the church, and I happen to be there. I use my talents and skills and my, how would I put this? My talent to fool people, I guess, sometimes. Anyway, I was not too interested at the time, but anyway, Phyllis would not let me go by saying I was involved enough, so one day I decided I might as well give it a try. I attended several 6:30 meetings in the morning, Friday mornings. Man, I didn't like to get up that early in the morning anymore. I did that for let's see, 3 and 5, 8 years when I was working for the Guard, driving to Sioux Falls and Brookings to work. Every day, up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to work on time. I did not like to get up at 6 o'clock or whatever to get there. But I did that. And I did find out that it was a very worthwhile group of men to be a part of and to share with. Father Paul and the other men welcomed me and made me feel like I belonged to the group. This was Jesus letting me know that I belonged to the group. On the 13th of May 2016, the meeting had great conversation about prayer and prayer life and other issues. About 20 minutes into the discussion, Father Paul had the group split up in three groups. We had us call off the numbers 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I don't know if I was a 1 or 2 or 3, but anyhow, there was 6 of us plus Father in the room. And the other ones all boogied out to different rooms to talk about what had happened or what was going to happen or about the lessons. These 5 men, I'll mention their names here. I don't know, I haven't even looked around who's all here that were there. But anyway, Jared Schilling, Matt Kranz, John Wisemantle, Kurt Reeder, and Tom Batta were all with me in that room with Father Paul. I finally made the statement when we were visiting about different things that I seemed to be struggling with my prayer life in response to Jesus on a day-to-day basis. For example, I often went on my daily duties and daily chores, and just got up and went. Never thought about thanking God for another beautiful day, or if it was a nasty day, thank God, well, tomorrow will be right, it'll be better. I never thought about those things. I never took the time to thank God for another beautiful day. I was not sure that Jesus was always by my side and within me as time passed during the days. Evening prayer was a once-in-a-while thing. As I was bearing my soul to the others, I was suddenly aware, like Emmaus, that Jesus was standing in the corner of the room looking at me. You can look at this picture I gave you tonight and imagine him standing there in front of you with white garments on, flowing hair, smile on his face, outstretched arms. It just took me by total surprise, total unbelief. I dropped my head to the table in front of me and started to cry in shock. I think it was shock, or wonder, or just disbelief that Jesus could actually appear to me like that. It was only lasted a few seconds. Again, like Jesus on that route to Emmaus, and when he served those gentlemen communion, that's what it really was, bread, he disappeared. So he was there with me for a few seconds, and then he was gone. I didn't feel worthy that Jesus would show himself to the likes of me. He stood there with his smile on his radiant face, white garments, and with his hands outstretched by his sides, as I explained, much like the picture on the Divine Chaplet cards that I have passed out tonight, and that are pictures of posters of him that you have all seen. I still ask myself, why me, Lord? Why did Jesus appear to me and not the other men with me? I am not worthy of such blessings in my life. I still don't think I'm worthy of those blessings. As I was still crying, I found something inside of me to tell the others in the room that what just had happened. I found that the men there somehow or another fully believed my story, never questioned it. It can be called a story, if you will, but that is just a term that I use to explain what happened in those minutes in that room and those holy men there with me. At the close of our meeting that day, Father Paul asked me to stay with him for a while and talk about what had happened. I remember telling him that maybe I just thought this happened and Jesus appeared to me and it was my imagination, and on and on. I still probably tears in my eyes like they are now. But he assured me that he was positive that it was a reality and that Jesus really did appear. And so that's what we believe today, that Jesus did appear to me. Not the others, but to me. But it's my responsibility now to share that story with other folks as we go on. I found out several months ago when, what's his name from Sioux Falls? Pardon?
Dr. Birdwell.
Dr. Birdwell was here, and he talked about, and Father assisted him in our personal journey to Emmaus. That really struck me. And that same night, I was going to get up to thank him for showing up and the wonderful talk. And there's two girls behind me kept saying, "You got to tell your story." I said, "Hush up." And I took a couple steps forward. "Dave." So a couple more steps, and finally I stopped and I shared the short version of me seeing Jesus that day. People were sitting back in the corner of the room here and other places with just really, So this isn't the first time I've told people this, and I hope it isn't the last time I have to. I don't have to, but I get the privilege to. I'm still waiting for Father Paul to come to me someday and say, "Hey Dave, it's your turn to give the homily." And I'm just waiting for him to say that because I got a word for him. No. I don't think I can do that. But who knows? I feel blessed that I was chosen to witness Jesus, and especially that all those men with me actually believed what had just happened. Those men and others that this vision was shared with later have all become very close to me as men and women of faith. It is not uncommon to get loving hugs and greetings from so many people that did not really know until this happened to me, and that I have shared my vision with. I've been told from others that this was somewhat changed their lives. Now, there's some men in this room that weren't there with me that night when that happened, but they always attend. Jim Dugan, for one, he was in Hawaii when this happened. And the next Friday morning, I got out of the car and he was walking up the street and he said, "Dave, I hear what happened to you last week here." And my question was, how did you find that out? Tell him how. Tom Batta texted Jim what had happened. He was just so taken by that.
The same morning that happened.
Yes, he did. So, it just overwhelms me. Father asked me then that day before if I would share it with the other guys in the whole group that next morning. And so I shared it with the rest of the men. With a little difficulty and a few tears in my eyes, like when I told all my family, my kids about it, and some other friends about it. I've never been able to tell that story without crying my eyes out when I do it. I finally realized that Jesus showed me the way to be really a better Catholic and Christian. My prayer life has improved very much, and I thank God many times over for the blessing that He has given me. I know now, to pay attention to God's creations and presence and nature in my family and friends and all those material things that really belong to God and only lets us share them with Him. That's interesting. I hope He really likes that car I'm driving. But all that stuff is made available by the will of God. That we have to understand. Phyllis has been my love and best friend for many years now, and I only hope that God gives us many more years to share with each other, our families, friends, and God Himself. I have another experience to share with you that I haven't shared with very many people. This only happened on the 8th of this month. I believe there are angels alive and well after this happened. We were driving to Rapid City to go to our granddaughter's confirmation. And I stopped in Wall to get some gas, and then we had to go to the restrooms and whatever. We got back in the car, and I said to Phyllis, "Well, I suppose we should be on our way." She said to me, "Aren't we going to get a donut?" You go to Wall, you have to get a donut from Wall Drug, right? I said, "Why are you asking? I'm the one that likes a donut." She said, "I know that." So we drove down to Wall Drug, went in the store, standing in line to order our donut, and two young men were kind of standing beside me there. I was waiting to get my order, and they were waiting for their order. These two guys' names, got it written down here someplace. Carl Swanson was one of them, blonde-haired kid, nice-looking young man. And the other guy's name was Rusty Zimmerman. He had a cap on, little crusty beard, something like Dave's got there, a little bit less than what you have. But anyway, these guys were standing there, and Rusty said to me, "That's a beautiful cross that you're wearing." And I said, "Well, thank you. I appreciate that." His next question was, "Are you Catholic?" Kind of quietly, actually, because there's other people right there. But anyway, I said, "Yes, we are. Have been all our life." Well, he said, "So are we." So with that, I handed him a coin. Both the boys, I gave him a coin. And it kind of startled him. He said, "We have a story to tell you." "Oh, really?" Phyllis might have to correct me here a little bit, and if you will, go ahead. But anyway, they said, would you have lunch with us then? I said, well, we have to get our donut and coffee, and we want to get on the road. Well, are you sure? So they got their hamburger and their fries, and he said, well, before we sat down, he said, well, here's part of our story. He said, we were traveling, we went through the Grand Canyon, and on our travels we went to Mass down there. I don't know where it was for sure. But he said, I think there were 6 people at church that belonged to that parish, the way it appeared. And there was a family from Czechoslovakia there. How he knew that, I don't know. But anyway, they greeted each other a little bit there, and then when they left, they followed this company. About 30 miles down the road, they realized they were following this family. And so Rusty tells us that as they're driving along, it must have been Carl wrote a little note on the paper and held it on the window, and he drove up beside the car and said, would you stop, please, for a little bit? We'd like to pray with you. Now, can you imagine 2 guys, 24, 25 years old, wanting to stop a car that they did not really know the people very well at all and want to pray with them? I can't imagine that myself. So the car finally pulled over. And so they prayed with them. I don't know how long it took, but the parting gift, this couple gave them a beautiful picture of the Divine Mercy. And so when I gave them that coin, it almost took their breath away, because it's the second time now in a few days that now somebody has given them that picture. So I said, well, that's a wonderful story. How could I beat that one? And anyway, I finally said, well, I guess you told your story, now I better tell you mine. So I shared my story of vision with them. Not to drag on too much longer, I still got 4 minutes here. In our visit at the table, Carl said that his ambition was to be in the military and be a chaplain. Now that's interesting. Now these guys had met 2 years before at a retreat, a Catholic retreat somewhere. And they hadn't been together for quite a while, and then they met again, and now they're traveling together. I'm not sure they're driving a car, a pickup, or a semi. I really don't know. But their goal was to be in Minneapolis, where Carl's family was. And then Rusty said that he wanted to be a missionary. And so that was in their several somewhat long-range plans. So they were telling us about their story, and it was such a overwhelming experience with these guys. And then Rusty, before we left, Rusty said to me and to Phyllis, is it okay if I pray with you? Or for you? So anyway, absolutely. We all held hands around the table. He bowed his head. I never heard a prayer quite like that. From the heart. He thanked God for everything that was going on in his life and our life, and thank the Lord for us and what we've done, and thank the Lord that I was able to share this vision with them, and other things like that. And it was just such a moving thing. And now I have their email addresses. I have a phone number for one of them. Phyllis forgot to tell me that just before we left, I got up from the table and I turned my back to Rusty and I took my cross off and I gave it to him. Tears in his face. What are you doing? And then Phyllis reminded me that Carl needed one too. I only had one. So I told them both that there would be another one in the mail. And so last week I got this one and another chain. I haven't mailed it to Carl yet because I've been kind of waiting for a response from one of them boys. Now I don't know for sure if angels have emails or not. But what's the chance of something like that happening? God sent them to us. Had to. Otherwise, why would she have said, we got to go get a donut. When she didn't even care to go get a donut, although she loved them. The maple ones are really good. So anyway, that's kind of wraps it up pretty much, with that story. And again, it takes me back to Emmaus. Jesus is with us. He came back and visited all those men again in the upper room. They were scared to death. I'm scared to death the next time he sees me too. But hopefully everything will work out in the end. I'll be with him someday in heaven with my wife and all of you folks. Not just one of you, but all of you folks. I'm also sure that the memories I have about all of my visions will continue to keep me on the path to happiness and life with God when He calls me home. Again, I thank Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit for a wonderful life and future. And the gift of truly being able to see Christ in my daily activities, just as those two men did on their journey to Emmaus. Thank you, folks. Okay, that's enough applause. Parting comments. Did you say something about this is our last event for this year? Our next meeting will be in September. We don't have the list of names put together, the speakers, but Missy is working diligently on that to try to have local people, parish members, hopefully, to share their stories of their journey toward Jesus. And so, with that, we still have this Tooth on Tap little box, free will offering if you have $1 or $2 to help us keep this program on the go. And so, with that, thank you all for attending, and thank you all for your support of me this last year. Hope that we're alive and well and able to continue next year with it. And thank you, Father Paul, for being